Welcome to Empire Building, the podcast where we talk about building big businesses and even bigger lives. I'm your co-host, Via Williams.
I'm Wendy Papazan.
I'm Seychelle Van Poole.
And I'm Sarah Reynolds. Have you ever heard these statements and or thought them? Things like, I'm too old or too young for that. It's impossible to build an empire and have young kids at the same time. My career is going to have to wait. That does not work here. That's impossible. Or I will never be able to do that. And the list could go on and on and on. All of these are examples of limiting beliefs. Whether we want to admit it or not, all of us are filled with things in our mind that we call limiting beliefs. So these are beliefs that we have sort of ingrained in us that limit us, right? And many times we will not do something if our mindset is not there, if our mind is not wrapped around it. I know that all of us have struggled with different limiting beliefs sort of throughout our career and lifetime. And we are going to talk about 6 steps today in overcoming limiting beliefs. So real tactical episode in terms of how to overcome something that holds many of us back. And so these beliefs can keep us really in our comfort zone, right? So limiting beliefs try to keep us in our comfort zones. Sometimes they're not even, they're unconscious, meaning like we have no idea we even have them.
Oh,
right?
Mostly they're unconscious.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
For sure.
mostly.
Yeah. But we view them as absolute truth sort of in our mind. And so it takes a complete sort of paradigm shift, right? To overcome limiting beliefs. So, but we want to start. I remember when we first launched this podcast, we made a commitment to our listeners to be vulnerable and transparent. And I have seen growth in myself as well as all of my co-hosts on this. And so I would just want to open it up. What are some limiting beliefs that you guys have overcome?
Well, I went through a massive limiting belief, like hurdle. I don't know what it is. I jumped over the hurdle. I kind of went through I never know what to call it, like a life reset in 2017 and 18. I was like 47, 48, kind of at that age. And I started pushing back thoughts that were coming into my head that I really want to go into like corporate leadership. Like I really want to go lead. I wanted to go in that direction. And I just kept saying, I have no corporate leadership experience. No one's going to hire a 47 or 48-year-old. Like, that's just dumb. No one's going to hire me for that. I don't have any experience. So I'm stuck. I'm stuck doing this. I'm stuck doing this. And, and I don't know what the self-talk was, but I just really believe that, if you didn't start doing this whole thing when you were, I don't even know what I thought, like in your 30s, that it was just too late. I just thought it was too late. And it's interesting because I did get into corporate leadership at 48, and I have read so many articles now. One of them is that women tend to have their peak earning years in their 60s. In their 60s.
Whoa.
Because, we start a little later because we're having kids. I mean, we just, my trajectory
that's a limiting
is
belief,
as
though.
fast as a lot of...
That can be a limiting belief.
For me, it can be. Yeah. For me and a lot of women I know, though, like I've done this just as fast as a lot of guys. I just started a decade later because, I chose to, I just made different decisions. So yeah, that was a big one.
I love that. Yeah. Well, I've overcome so many limiting beliefs. I mean, one of the good things about starting a business is you're challenging yourself almost on a daily basis with what you can do and what you can't do. And, I know for me, I think that when I started my business, my kids were little, they were 3 and 5. I really had a limiting belief around having a big business.
Yeah.
And I think I've told you guys this before, but I officed right across from Tim Heil, who's another top agent in our company. Super great guy. I started my business in my late 30s. I was almost 40 and he was like 21. We started the same year and he officed right across from me and I got to see his business grow really rapidly. And I saw the mess of it. I saw the mess of his growth. I saw him coming out of his office upset a lot, and I really was like, I don't want that. That to me is too uncomfortable. I have little kids. I have a husband who's an executive. Like, I just didn't want all that mess. And at a certain point, I realized that I spent those first years mastering the art of leverage. And I would call it an art. So my mastering that art of leverage, it doesn't, I didn't necessarily master lead generation and get into all of that. But at some point, we were at the same level, but we had gone about it a different way. And I had succeeded through people, and he had succeeded by putting in the most hours possible. When I look back, I was okay with that because I got to be at the same level. Of course, he's gone on way beyond me, but that realization of, what you focus on really makes a difference. And I got to have all those hours with my family all those years, And so it was great for me to really understand that I could have everything that I wanted. I could have my big life and my big business at the same time. It's just I had to approach it a little bit differently. But for many years, I would literally look at him and say, like, no, that is not for me.
I think, Wendy,
that's really good.
There are so many young moms that can relate to what you're saying right now. I remember speaking every time I was pregnant, and without fail, a young wife would come up to me and say, we wanted to have a baby, but I'm scared because I don't think I can get pregnant right now. Because what about my business? What am I going to do? Right. And so many limiting beliefs around having a big life, being an awesome mom, being an awesome wife, and at the same time having a big business. I think a lot of moms or want to be moms.
They do
really struggle with that limiting belief. So I'm glad you overcame that.
Because I coach them and they do. It's so common. There's a causation in their mind.
It's a common,
if you have a big business, then it'll cause, an imbalanced life.
Well, we're really only a couple generations away from, I think about my mom, right? She was a mom in the 70s. She had to quit her job as a secretary when she got pregnant because they wouldn't keep her. Basically, they said, "You're pregnant. You don't get to come back." So we're only 50 years away from that in our society. So if you are thinking that, if you have that feeling in your head, if you have that limiting belief in your head, it's a very real limiting belief because our moms and our grandmas, they actually experience that in real time.
Honestly, look at the track star Allison Felix. We're still dealing with that.
Oh, I love
that. She's the greatest track star of all time. And her sponsor wanted to pay her 70% less because she was pregnant.
Yeah.
So we're still dealing even with companies having limiting beliefs around women, our own societal pressures of putting limiting beliefs on us. And I think you have to fight that much harder to overcome it. I know I've been pretty transparent about our team kind of imploding like a month before COVID started. And I've had two huge limiting beliefs I've really been working through this last year. One of them is if I build it back up, it's all just going to go away again. And so I keep hitting the ceiling of hiring because I am subconsciously limiting myself to say, if I go beyond this, it's all just going to implode again. And so I've really been working personally through that. And then the other one was, and it's something I allowed, so I take responsibility for this, but I allowed some of my former team members to kind of put in the mindset in my head of like, every time you leave town, the phrase that would be said to you would be, well, we're just trying to keep the team together while you're out of town. And it created this like mindset around like, I don't deserve time off, or if I take time off, like bad things will happen. And so I'm working really hard around the mindset of like, I do deserve time off, and we're building great, wonderful leaders that are leading the team and smart and dynamic and capable. And we all deserve quality time off to refresh ourselves to come back. But those are, as a mom and a wife and a business owner and all of those things, if we don't take our time off, we're not going to be good for anybody. And so those are, I'm working really hard on those two right now. I'm not completely there, but I would say I'm like, as we talked about in a previous episode, I'm like, into the conscious competence of learning through those two right now.
Well, I love that, Seychelle. And I think what that goes to is we all have beliefs around our work is our worth.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
And that's maybe at the core of it. And we live in a society where our work is our worth. And, I talk to people in other countries and they think Americans are basically insane. We have more money, we have more opportunity, we have the ability to control our own life and our own destiny. And so many of us are workaholics, and it's because we believe in our core that our work is our worth and that we won't be worthy if we don't work.
That I think is
I'm
beautifully said.
guilty of that.
Yeah. Hand up over here. Yes.
Guilty as charged.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
So much of what you said, I relate to. This year, we started doing the 12-week year sort of model. And that has actually helped me so much in this area, because at the end of the 12-week year, you're supposed to have a vacation if you when you hit your goal. And so it's like, I get permission to have my vacation. I'm like, okay. But no, I've struggled with that for sure. One of my limiting beliefs that I've semi overcome, but I would say very similar to you saying I'm working on it still, is just this idea of being like worthy of certain talent. In terms of wanting to work with you or even approaching certain people, right? That I sort of have in my mind, like, well, they would never take this role, or they would never want to come work with me. And so this limiting belief that I'm not a strong enough leader yet to sort of hire or approach certain people. And so that's something that I'm actively working through, but for sure a limiting belief that I've been focusing on. So, well, we're passionate about this topic.
Girl,
obviously.
You're worthy. You're worthy. You are worthy.
I'm hearing words though, like worth. I'm hearing words like permission, right? I'm hearing words of like, for me, fear, impatience.
Yes.
Yeah. All those come into our limiting beliefs for sure.
Yeah. And I think we're all passionate about this because if you look at, I know if you look at all of our growth, you will see that a lot of times it started with our mindset and overcoming a limiting belief. And then all of a sudden it was like, boom, take off whatever area that is.
It is literally a correlation between the more you work on this and the more you get rid of your limiting beliefs and success. Like literally the people who become successful in whatever endeavor they're pursuing are the ones who got past limiting beliefs. It's just a very simple equation.
Ooh,
so
thank
true.
you for saying that. I needed to hear that today.
So why do we have limiting beliefs?
So why do we have them, ladies? Yeah.
I think a big thing is that it is our sort of defense mechanism, right? We're either, a lot of times it's like fear, we have frustrations, failures, or maybe even some disappointments that sort of shape why we have limiting beliefs. And so like for me, for my example, like if I see someone talented and don't think that I can approach them about joining me, it's sort of the fear of rejection, right? Or, and so a lot of times that's why is a lot of fear led.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and like, so where, if you look back, where do our limiting beliefs come from, right? They come from, family experiences and beliefs and, what either our education or our mentors or our family put on us. A lot of times projection is a real thing. And so somebody's experience generationally or somebody's experience of how they view the world can easily be projected on somebody else to limit their potential. And I know that from my grandmothers on both sides, right, were fierce women and their bravery. Like my mom's mom had an 8th grade education and went to go work for the Navy and started working just as a clerical assistant and worked her way up actually to be head over all of the housing of the entire Navy. By the time she left the Navy. And, it's things like that I think, where are the examples in our world? Can we find them in our family? Can we find them in our friends? Can we find them outside if we don't have them inside of our, our own direct relationships to use those as inspirations to be able to share those with other people?
I was thinking about this, and a lot of us talk on our teams about like scarcity versus abundance mentality. And when I was reading up for this episode, I started thinking about, that probably wouldn't even be a thing if it weren't for the Great Depression. And I started thinking about my Meemaw and how she has had a scarcity mentality, right? Like saving everything, there's not going to be enough, right? And that is because of what she went through, right? Her family experiences and her beliefs that sort of molded her into who she is, and a whole generation that molded her into who she is, that then had kids, and they then had kids. And so that is where we see a lot of the threat of scarcity, is because of their experiences. And so limiting beliefs come from family experiences and beliefs. The other big one, which I already mentioned, is fear, right? Fear so much impacts how we live, right? How we live. So that's a big one.
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, I mean, with that said, how do we overcome them? How have we all overcome them? How have, ultra successful people overcome their limiting beliefs?
Well, there's 6 quick and easy steps, Via. So I was being sarcastic there because we're saying there's 6 steps, but these are not easy. Overcoming limiting beliefs is for sure a journey. It's not overnight 6 steps. So Wendy, why don't you start us off with step number 1?
Sure. Well, the first one is to admit you have a limiting belief around it. And honestly, that's not easy at all. And probably you don't even know that you have a limiting belief around it, which is why having a confidant, a friend, a mentor, someone on your team, a coach, somebody who can point out your blind spots. I mean, guys, they're called blind spots for a reason. It's because we can't see them. And all of us have limiting beliefs. All of us have blind spots. And so having a friend or a confidant who can really point those out to you is super powerful.
So powerful.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah. Number 2 is just recognizing that it just is a belief. It is not a fact. Like it's called limiting beliefs for a reason. It's a perspective that you have for whatever reason. And it is not fact, right? I was thinking about this earlier when you guys were talking. I was thinking of my wonderful, well-meaning mom who is constantly telling me how I'm working too hard. You're working too hard. You're doing too much. And she just is constantly trying to tamp that down. She doesn't mean to, but if I were less strong, I might start believing that and having a limiting belief that it's not good to work hard. And I just have decided that it's great for me and who I am to work hard. It's great for my family for me to work hard. And so, there are people around you sometimes that, it's just so reinforced. It's subconscious. Like my mom has a limiting belief around hard work. She just does. She thinks that you need to come, there's just a certain amount of hours that you work to live. You don't live to work. She just doesn't understand it. She just, anyway, that's what popped in my head.
And I love that, Via, because that goes right into number 3, which is challenge your own belief, right? And ask yourself some questions around those. Like, I love the question of how would I think about this belief if I were someone else, right? Like, how would Oprah feel about this belief? Or what would, Steve Jobs say about this belief? Or Gary Keller, right? Is this belief really grounded? And can I find somebody else that could disprove this?
Yeah, I love that.
Love that.
Such a big one. That has helped me a lot with that one question, say on how does this person that I respect in that area see themselves, and or are they they'll ask someone talented to come join them, right? And so I'm that has been a big question for me in overcoming that belief, for sure. I love that.
I just would add that, you could ask yourself, would I be okay if my son or daughter said this, right? If your son or daughter said, hey, I don't think it's okay to grow a big business and have a family at the same time, how would you respond to that? So pretend that it's your kid saying it and see how that feels.
That's really fair too.
That is so good, Wendy.
That is really good.
So good. Step 4 is recognize that there's an impact to you not overcoming this belief. Wendy and I had a pretty big experience 4 to 5 years ago on social media before we were even really, really good friends. But I sort of had this idea that I couldn't handle speaking a lot, being a good mom, being a good wife, and also running a big business. And so I sort of stayed in the background. You didn't see me on stages or out there speaking. I had this belief that that can't be part of my time right now with the young kids. And I had posted about that. So we're in the real estate industry, as many of our listeners know, and our industry is 65% of realtors are females, right? But only 30% of the top real estate businesses are female led. And so I did a post about that, right? And Wendy reached out and said, I've noticed you're not speaking up. You're an example of a powerful female, but you're not putting yourself out there. You're not speaking up. And so my limiting belief was actually impacting other young moms, other females, that they couldn't see that it was possible, right? Because I was sort of staying in the background. And so when we choose to sort of give into fear or not overcome a limiting belief, it has an impact. So just remembering the seriousness of that. And so what are the consequences of holding on to your limiting belief? How will that impact your family? How will that impact your friends? How would that impact the world if you don't overcome that limiting belief? So,
wow. So powerful.
I love that so much. And I also would add to that, Sarah, like you're talking about impacting others, right? It'll impact your life.
Yes.
Ask yourself what the impact is on your life if you don't, achieve what you want to achieve and, whatever that is, right? And ask yourself if you're going to be able to forgive yourself when you're 80, 90 years old, looking back, that was it. That stopped me. I do that a lot. I go back in time a lot. I go, God, when I'm, 80 years old sitting on my patio, am I going to look back and go, what an idiot? That was nothing, Bia. Why didn't you go for it then, right? I think I will always tell myself to think that I should have thought bigger and that I should have pushed past it. So it's like a little mind hack I do all the time when I'm struggling with something. Like, okay, when I'm 80 and I'm looking back, am I going to look back on this and go, that was dumb?
Yeah. Well, nobody wants regret. And to be clear, to Sarah's point, not everybody has to be an inspiration. Not everyone has to be a role model. It's okay, actually, if you want to sit back and kind of do your own thing. You don't have to go out and speak. But I knew Sarah and I knew her heart. And and here she was articulating her frustration when she could have done something about it. And so to be clear, not everybody has to get out there and do all the things. That's not what we're saying. But if you feel passionate about something, don't let a limiting belief about what's possible hold you back.
Yes, I think this would be a great time to listen to our What Brings You Joy episode. Because I think a lot of things that bring us joy, we have limiting beliefs around doing more of that or wanting that, right? So knowing Wendy knew that it would bring me joy to have an impact on impacting more female leaders, right, in our organization and in our industry. And yet that would bring me joy, but yet I wasn't doing anything about it because of my limiting beliefs. And so look at that joy list and say, so whatever brings you joy, and then connect the two, and what limiting beliefs do you have around maybe doing more of that, running towards your joy. So
I love that. Well, thank you, Sarah, for removing that limiting belief, because you've really impacted so many people, me included. I really sincerely love how you do it all. I know you don't do it all, but I sincerely love how you are an advocate for moms and women. And you're such an incredible business person. And I really appreciate everything you've done. So, yeah.
Me too.
You guys are making me cry. Thank you.
Sweet.
So, number 5.
What's number 5, Wendy?
Number 5. Okay, that's me. Sorry, I got a little intense there. Okay, so number 5 is to pick a new belief, right? Think about trying the opposite. A great way to do this is through affirmations. So those of you that don't do affirmations are basically saying what you want to have happen over and over again, either out loud or in your brain, because your brain actually doesn't discern the difference between what you tell it by speaking and what actually it thinks it knows. And so you can change your belief, right? And it's not easy, guys. I'll tell you, I had the privilege of having a wealth building conversation with Dan Grieb last night. A lot of you know him, an exceptional human being. And here's someone who is carved out of poverty and pain and suffering. And he has very consciously chosen new beliefs and a new way to live his life. And he's such an incredible human being. A lot of that is through everything that we're talking about here, reading affirmations, because he's literally had to tell his brain that everything that he learned when he was a child is true. Because basically they tell you at age 7 and then by age 14, your whole personality is set in stone. Everything you think, everything you do, everything you believe is set in stone at age 14, which is why it's very hard to do what we're talking about today. It's hard to change your beliefs, but affirmations is one way to do it because you're basically training your brain over and over and over to think the opposite. So if you have a limiting belief, try turning that into a statement around the opposite, which is, for instance, like for me, a limiting belief was I can't have a big business and have a family. And so wake up every day, look yourself in the mirror and say, I can have a big business and a family at the same time.
So do you want to hack on that? On affirmations?
A hackermation? No, affirmation.
Oh,
sorry.
She couldn't stop herself.
That's a good one.
That's terrible.
That was good.
Sorry.
Wendy, the wordsmith comes out. I thought it was good. Hackermation. Okay, I like hackermation, but whatever. There is an app, and by the way, the app is not like we're not getting paid for this app, but it's called Think Up.
Okay,
and you record affirmations in your own voice over a music bed, and they give you like hundreds and hundreds of them to choose from, or you make up your own. And during that period of transition in my life that I talk about a lot, kind of, when I just completely changed careers, moved my house, like remargined my life for my financial journey, all of that, I listen to Think Up every single morning. And it's your own voice talking to yourself to this wonderful music bed. It's really, truly one of the best apps I've ever had. I'll be honest, I haven't used it as much lately, which is probably a good sign, that I haven't like felt as compelled to. But there are times that when I go through certain things that I will record very specific affirmations and just play it, in the morning on my way in, before I, if I have an important meeting or an important call. It's just a great, I love it.
That's awesome. Thank you for that.
Good tip.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah. Oh, and that goes to number 6. I have number 6, which is take action, Jackson. No, there's no Jackson. But take action. I mean,
where does that come from?
I think it's in the show. Yeah.
Action Jackson?
Yeah. Was it a show?
I think it's a show.
I do not know that, but you want me to Google that for you?
One of our assistants to do it.
Oh, yeah. One of our production assistants that's hanging out in the wings. Oh, that makes me laugh. The control crew that's
like,
here.
Why do you do this?
With the soundboard and yeah, they're looking it up right now as we speak. I guarantee it. It's like Seychelles' dog is basically typing like on his paws. That's about who we have.
If he starts barking,
no,
it's
but I mean,
just so you know, yes,
that's what he's doing. He's just the best way to get forward on something, even if you might be in a little bit of a rut about something, is to get into motion, get into action. And I say this a lot, but getting some clarity up front about what the chunked down activities are, and just, starting with that first domino and just taking some kind of action and start implementing. Because I often think that step 1 isn't what's intimidating. It's step like 67. And in our brains, we go from step 1 to 67, and it sounds really, really intimidating. And in reality, all we need to do is like walk out the door, and then we can turn right, and then we can turn left. And then before you know it, you've walked 20 miles, but walking 20 miles sounds really hard, right? So just getting into action and getting some clarity on at least what you think the action steps are, knowing you can pivot, right?
Okay. So,
are you going to answer?
Seychelles?
Yes.
Did you just look it up?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. Action Jackson?
Action Jackson.
Okay. Yeah, we don't want to leave our viewers hanging.
No, yeah. Our Hatari did some puppy Googling, and he figured out that Action Jackson is named for a Detroit cop who is slow to take offense to things, but when he does, man, you better get out of the way because Action Jackson is coming for you. Action Jackson. That's hard to say. Also, but since I'm coming to you from Michigan, I felt like it was only appropriate that I told you about the Detroit cop. It is.
By the way. It's not,
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was a real guy. No. You made it sound like it was like a real cop.
No. It is. It's a movie cop. Named for a Detroit cop, though. It was a Detroit cop.
Oh. Yeah. Oh, okay.
For reals. Action Jackson. Detroit Cap.
Makes me like it even better.
Now you're going to have to use it more. So
now.
take action, Jackson.
Yeah.
Well, you guys, this has been really great. I think
Whatever your name is,
take action. Y'all, this is awesome. Thank you for joining us today, because I think this is something that the four of us are still in the active pursuit of, right? And I love that this really gives it, it's a forever thing. We're always going to run into limiting beliefs and ceilings, and then we have to break through them and overcome them. So admitting, number one, right? Admitting you have that limiting belief and recognizing that it's just a belief and it doesn't have to be your truth. Right? I love the example of Dan Grebe. I think we have several friends that we could talk about and our own personal stories from that too. Right? And then getting into questioning, why do I even have that belief? Or is that a belief I need to have? Recognizing that by not overcoming it, you're actually not only impacting yourself, but you might be actually holding others back too. And I love, Wendy, you having that conversation with Sarah today. And then the beauty of it is it's our life and we get to choose a different belief. We get to choose what our destiny is, and we get to choose to consciously overcome that and change what our truth is. And then, as Vi beautifully said, go take action, Jackson. We want you to live a big business and build a big business, but more importantly, we really want you to live an even bigger life. And that's exactly what this episode is about today. So remove those limiting beliefs and go live a big life, you guys. Thanks for joining.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Thanks for listening to Empire Building. If you like what you heard, join our tribe by subscribing on your favorite podcast platform and help us spread the word by leaving a 5-star rating and review. Until next time, wishing you a life worth living. And remember, you are an empire builder.